now. Terry Helwig, you're an award-winning author, and I'm really excited to talk to you today. Tell us a little about yourself and what you do.
Okay. Well, I live in Southwest, a barrier island in Southwest Florida, and I've lived here for about 8 years, and I'm a writer, and I get very inspired by the nature around me. And so my most recent book that I published was Shifting Shorelines, Messages from a Wiser Self. And it's about the 40 years that I've walked this barrier island beach and kind of the things that I talk about it being the landscape of the inner landscape, but also the outer landscape. So it's nonfiction. And that is what I write, nonfiction. And then I've also written a memoir, coming of age memoir, and that was called Moonlight on Linoleum. But I've been a writer, most of my life, one way or another.
Terry, tell us a little bit more about your journey. How did you get to where you are today, where you got, those beautiful 2 books? Tell us a little bit about the steps that took you to where you are today.
Okay. Well, anybody that's read my memoir, Moonlight on Linoleum, really does know the story of, I grew up the oldest of 6 girls in the Southwest. And it was from a very dysfunctional childhood, you would say. And I went to 12 different schools in 11 years. And it's sort of like, what did I hold on to, or what did I dream? And the thing that helped me so much was reading books. I mean, when I learned to read, it was like, oh my gosh, there's a world outside of my world. And I just saw, different characters doing different things. So I began to have dreams of what I could maybe do someday. And I wrote some poetry and wrote things down. And so and my mother also, she was troubled, but she loved to write. So I think the seed to become a writer was planted very early in me. And, but truly the first few years of my life was just about kind of surviving the environment that I was in. And then I was basically a mother to my 6 younger sisters. And when I was old enough to leave home, I went to work and I started taking classes. But I now have my master's in psychology, but that took me years and years to do because I had to go back to school, as in college as an adult, get my master's as an adult. And actually, I had one daughter, and when she graduated from high school, I graduated with my master's.
I love that. Isn't that beautiful? Terry,
Thanks.
tell me how, you write these books and they are really spiritual. So when did you think I've got something to say that's more than my story? Or how did you get to the point of feeling, yes, this is actually about much more?
Much more. Well, again, I think, when I was doing my psychology and everything, somebody said, well, what got you through your childhood? And I said, it was my connection to nature. I said, I really think Mother Nature kind of became my mother. And so I felt such connection and wholeness. And I felt sometimes like a mystic or something. I would just go into that quiet place in nature and listen to myself. And again, I think early on, it was more about survival than thriving. But then later on, I think I did go into psychology to maybe understand the family dynamics a little bit. But I began to hear people telling their own stories. And of course, all of us have our situations and our traumas, and some people, very dysfunctional families. And then it was like, but my belief is we don't have to be defined by our past. We don't have to be defined by our childhood. We're no longer children. We couldn't make choices early on, but we can make choices now. And so I have a good friend who's also a writer, and she wrote a story that was fiction, and it was kind of about a dysfunctional family, and everybody said, "Oh, I'm so sorry you had that experience." And she's going, "Oh no, that wasn't my experience. I was just writing about it." And I said, "Oh, mine would be exactly the opposite. I would write about my experience." And they're going, "That didn't really happen, did it?" And she goes, "You know, Terry, I think you should write your story." And I said, "Well, does the world really need, another book or another memoir?" And she goes, "I really think, that you need to write your story, because it's about what you have always said, that your childhood does not have to define you." So I thought, well, maybe I have a message for other people, to say that.
Oh, definitely. And so many things resonate with me and they'll resonate with many other people. Terry, so tell me, are you a day-to-day writer or are you a psychologist that also writes books?
Really, I define myself as a woman who likes to write and is very interested in psychology. So I have worked with women on spiritual and personal growth and development. I no longer do that. And then I have written for various publications over the years, but I'm sporadic, I would say. One book was 212, and then this last one came out in 218. I'm going to start in January. I'm going to try my hand at fiction. But again, it's going to be fiction where it's going to still be trying to give a message out. And I'm going to have this woman that, takes another younger woman who's having some issues under her wing and try to be an inspiration to her. So
I
I
love
guess that's
that.
how I describe myself.
Yeah, that's great. Terry, what motivates you on this path for you to now start a fiction book or
Hmm.
series?
Um, it's interesting. It's been, again, nature is so important to me, and I grew up in the Southwest. I am in Florida now, in the ocean. I'm looking at it right now. But I also love the Southwest, and so I started collaging. Or I call it a collage. I gathered these pictures that would inspire me, and I've put them on my computer screen, and they run all the, how you have pictures that'll just go. So for the last 5 years, I've been having these pictures, and I'm having a story come up from these pictures. So you might say I'm collaging, and there's this character that's been in my head, and she won't leave me alone. So I guess I have to put her on paper so she'll leave me alone.
Definitely. I love that. Terry, what would you say is your superpower? What makes you so good at what you do?
Um, well, I really think it's something, if we can discover what it is that brings us joy and energy, um, I think that's the place that we should mine, the place that we should go in, because I believe that connects us to something that's greater or beyond ourselves, something that's almost beyond ego. You tap into a bigger picture, a bigger consciousness, whatever you want to call it. I believe there's, synchronicity in the universe and magic in the universe. And the other day, I love the bird, the osprey, and I'm looking out the window, and it was like 15 floors up, and a bird in flight, an osprey bird in flight, lost its feather, and it's just going down like this, going down like this. And I thought, I want that feather, I want that feather. And it just landed, on a chair that was not very far from me outside at all. So that might just be nothing to somebody else, but to me, that is so, it's thrilling, it's connecting, it's affirming, it's inspiring. So that's how I get inspired.
I mean, that's really you find your flow in what you do. I love that. Thank you for describing that. Terry, what would your top tips be for other women?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What would your top tips be
Oh,
for other
top
women?
tip B. Well, again, I would say uh, it, be courageous about what it is that you believe strongly in and what it is that touches your heart. Because I think there is something in that if that's happening, there's a reason that you have this feeling. And I believe it's filling a need in the world. If we we each have a gift to give to the world, no matter what it is. I've personally known women that one woman's idea, and just on my little small island, like we had so many feral cats years ago, it was, quite a problem. And this one woman started something for like the love of cats. And 20 years later, we hardly have a cat that doesn't have a home or anything. It was one woman's idea. Another woman thought, well, maybe we could help the local farmers or something and start a farmer's market. And it was so small when she began. And now it's huge and people come from all around it. And these are just one idea from one woman. And for some reason that floats her boat and she goes with it. And it's amazing what can happen.
Absolutely. Thank you for that tip, Terry.
Sure.
Terry, what are your plans or dreams for your future?
I just to continue to be curious about the world. I don't know, I'd like to write this next book, and I don't know if there's other books after that, and it takes me a good while. But I think my dreams and futures are and I think that's reflected in my second book, Messages from a Wiser Self, is to just pass on some of what my generation has learned and gone through, and almost passing the baton over to the next generation to carry on and to applaud and cheer them.
I love that, Terry. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
It's been a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for having me.